You're watching Experience Comic Culture and Sales, streaming live daily to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Talkin Shop. It's me, Miss Jen. I'm totally back. It was a crazy week of Eisner judging, and then I brought back the cooties with me. So I have been, convalescing. So I'm glad to be back. I'm glad to feel better. And I'm glad for my first interview to be my good friend Ron V, because he's got some amazing stuff coming up. Creating new characters is something that's very special, and I'm excited to talk about that. And being part of a brand new company is really special. And I know you guys have lots of questions about that. So we're going to be right back after this to talk about all those cool things. Everybody, I see you guys popping on. Hey John, hey Cool Gamer, I'm super happy to see you guys. I apologize if my voice gets gravelly today. That's the way the COVIDs go. I would like to say I would like to celebrate this day because this is the first time I had COVID and I made it for almost 3 years. So yeah. All right, we are going to talk to the coolest cat on the planet right now. If you haven't read any of his early work, you absolutely should go back and find Graffiti's Wall in these Savage Shores because they're mind-blowing. And then this last year, he did Many Deaths of Layla Starr, and then the Eisner Award-winning Blue and Green. So those are things that you should go and hunt down. But today we're going to talk about the stuff that are happening now, the things that you need to start putting on your pull boxes, because there's some really cool things he's working on. I want you guys to not miss them. So everybody, welcome, Romby.
Hey. Always a pleasure to be here, Jen. Sorry to hear you're not well. Glad to see you're recovering.
I think I saw a funny story come out of maybe Paris or somewhere this week that Garth Ennis was there as like a special guest, and he had COVID, but he just put up a sign and said, "I've got COVID, yo," and people were like, "Whatevs."
Yeah, people were like, COVID, Garth Ennis signature. I'll take the signature, please.
It's like, just breathe that way. Okay.
No, he was, I mean, it was a bit weird. I met him at the green room where people take a break and stuff. I was like, "Hey, Garth, I haven't seen you in a while." I'm walking up to him and he puts both his hands up. I'm like, "Whoa, did I do something to offend you?" He's like, no, I've just got COVID. Don't come close to me. So I was like, okay, fair enough. I'll see you later. Bye. And I left the green room right away.
I'm sure you were like, "Oh man, what could I have possibly done?" No one wants to.
Yeah, it's like, wow, Garth didn't even take a couple of seconds to even pretend to be nice. He put his hands up right away.
Oh, what a mess. You've got a lot of exciting stuff going on. So
yeah, I do. I've been hard at work.
I just read today, like I did not know that you had your fingers in this new cool thing called Distillery that's happening.
Yeah.
And it says, was it right? Was the article get it right? You were a founding member?
Yes. I'm one of the glitterati that are the founding members of Distillery. It's very cool to be part of that group. A lot of very good friends and amazing creators on that list. James, Jock, Lee Garbett, Tula Lote, and like, what other big names can I throw in there?
Well, it's a huge stable of great names. Was it something that you guys just like from being on the regular convention circuit, just like talk about in green rooms and come up with working together?
Well, to be honest, like everything was kind of brought together by Chip and David, who obviously from their past Comixology days, you will all know very well. And Chip, has been around in comics for a very long time, and he reached out to me during Thought Bubble and said, we talked about these ideas, I think about a year ago. And it so happened that Jock was at Thought Bubble, Lisa was at Thought Bubble, and James was at Thought Bubble. So, I had a chance to talk to other people about it. I'm actually I think I'm one of the creators who came on board right at the very end. So, yeah, no, it was an exciting proposition, exciting opportunity to be part of, and I just want to make books, and I want to make books, and I want to do things that make it easier for me to make books. It's a very, very simple motivation to have.
So, okay. Explain just a little bit. I know it's pretty complex, but what kind of company is Distillery? What is it wanting to be? Just pure publishing, or does it have other aspects to it?
I mean, for now, I think to begin with, I think we just want to make good comics. And I think that kind of purity of intent should be there for all the creators. And I'm speaking from a creator's perspective. Obviously, from the business side of things, Chip and David have that handled. But I think everyone's motivation is just to have the freedom to do their own creative endeavors. And essentially, it's kind of a dream scenario, right? These people come along, they're like, we want to enable you to do what you do best. And, we've all heard the story's long history of creators kind of not getting their due. Whereas here, right from the bat, everything has the creators locked in. So the better you do, the better your book does, the more you get out of it, which I think is a sort of fair, modern, contemporary, as it should be deal. And then I know there are endeavors to do things a little bit differently with the sort of restrained period digital issues, and then collections that are a bit more sort of expanded size, kind of like the Black Label stuff, the European album size, if you will. And I think those are interesting things. I would much rather be part of a group of people who are wanting to try to do new things rather than just keep doing things the way they've been done, 30, 40 years ago. So we're not, the company's not like a huge publishing giant or anything. So when you're that size, you can try to do interesting new things. And I think that's where the business side of it is.
I think that we kind of live in a very unique time when, I don't know, pre-COVID, before distribution started changing up, that things were kind of like everything had been the same way for so long that not much change. Like digital came around, but we didn't see a lot of these kind of moves where we see like true companies kind of try something new. Like we saw it with Bad Idea First, and then we see there were a bunch of digital only platforms that came out, and those were all cool, gave people access to lots of new material. And I think that the Distillery is kind of interesting so far from what I've seen, because it doesn't forget the roots of the comic book store. It still has that as part of its plan, and have people still go and pick books up from there and continue that grand, almost water cooler conversation that happens there that just can't be replicated anywhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a kind of unique perspective, not unique, but a different perspective on it than a lot of readers, that might be looking at your show, because I used to read comics when I was back in India, right? And it was next to impossible for me to get any of the print stuff. So I would read purely digitally where that was accessible to me. Or then, back then you had your CBR downloads that you had to torrent and get them. And that's how I read, frankly, that's how I read all the old comics. They were bootlegged DC Marvel stuff that was available online. And I mean, at the time I didn't understand, piracy and the different aspects of it. But if it weren't for digital, I wouldn't have read comics when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. So I think in that aspect, the accessibility that digital provides is very interesting. But then if you turn around to now, when I'm making comics, like digital does very little for the creators. And so you can understand why it hasn't, blossomed into something more interesting, because yes, from a consumer point of view, the accessibility is great, but from a creator's point of view, it's just kind of there. I mean, it's still the direct market and the print and the issues and the collected editions that do most of the work. And there has to be a better way to do digital. There has to be a better way to provide access, but also make it worthwhile for creators, worthwhile for companies to delve into that market. That's my view of it, regardless of my participation in distillery. That's what I would have said even before. Now, from the distillery side of things, like, frankly, I've always been a print kind of person, right? So my digital exposure was largely because of points where I couldn't get print stuff. But the moment I found that I was able to get, like, I bootlegged pretty much all of Kingdom Come and Sandman and all of that when I was a kid. And then when I went to the States, I had someone gift me volume 1 of Sandman. And now I own, I don't know, I own the artist edition giant A2 size. So digital didn't prevent me from sort of expressing my love of print, but it did provide a lot of access. And I think that's how I look at it now. Frankly, like, if you gave me an option, I'd always choose print. But I'm glad the digital is there, and I'm glad the digital is trying to do something other than kind of just being available on a website that if you could bother to figure out how it works, you could read it,
I think what you bring up is a good point. That whole, just because somebody has chosen to purchase a comic for the first read digitally does not mean that they're not then going to want to go out and find a physical copy so they have something to own. Because that's one thing there is about digital, is that there's no real way to like hold it or even just like sell it to somebody else. Like comic books are, like, if you got, man, I'm in a tight spot. I don't want to sell my book, but at least I got something I can make rent with.
Well, I think that's one of the things that I think Distillery is doing, is it's making it possible within their application for people who own the digital releases to be able to sell them on to other people. So I think that's an really interesting aspect of it.
Now that's way cool.
Yeah. So from what I understand, if you buy something on the digital side of things, it's yours, you own it, and then you can sell that copy on within that market space to anyone else who comes in and says, hey, I want a digital copy of this comic to read, to own. And to those interested, I'm sure they will find more complex ways of doing it, but that's about my interest in it.
Just that it can be done.
Yeah.
So you've been really, really busy. You've been doing lots of work for both Marvel and DC. Mm-hmm. And as part of what you're working on right now, the stuff that's coming out, like the Vigil, you're really putting your mark on comic books, because these are not characters that have been around before that you're just like playing around with. These are your guys.
I did a Twitter thread about it today where I posted some sketches that I'd done in 2015 of some of these characters. And that's 1 year before I started making, like, before Black Mamba. And so these characters have been around in my head for a long time. And it's funny how things come around. When I made Black Mamba, some of the publishers were like, we're not sure, Indian characters, we don't know how this would do in the market. And now here I am at DC, Jessica Chen, the editor on the imprint, she comes up and says, Ram, you've done so many books with Indian characters. I know you said you'd love to introduce some Indian superheroes into the DCU. we're doing this imprint. Would you want to be part of it? So I was just looking back at like, that is a pretty cool full circle to be part of. Yeah.
So inside, were you just like screaming a little bit in that moment?
I never scream, to be honest. Like, I always get asked this question. My first, I don't know if a lot of people realize this. My first short story at DC was a Batman short story. My first short story at Marvel was a Wolverine short story. So I was like, yeah, I can't be intimidated anymore. Like, I've done those two characters. So I'm not a scream inward kind of guy, but I said this. I did a lot of things. I've done a lot of things in comics over these 6-7 years now, that I wouldn't have dreamed of when I was, sitting down at 2015. Like, I wouldn't have dreamed of writing Detective Comics. I wouldn't have dreamed of writing Venom. I wouldn't have dreamed of like having a top #1 selling comic of the month or whatever, None of these things even featured in my head, but I dreamed of introducing Indian superheroes into mainstream comics. And so very much this is a dream come true kind of project.
Okay, so they presented you with this offer to write these superheroes. How much did they already have that they said needed to exist so that it matched up with other things that might be tying in? And how much of it was just like, this is whatever you want to do, we'll make it work going forward?
I mean, I've worked with DC long enough for them also to know, like, whatever you want to do is probably the best way to get a good story out of me. And I imagine it's the same case with everyone else on these books. Like, there were no pre-existing conditions. There were no like frameworks that you had to be part of. Just, write the characters that write the characters that reflect your history and your background, and write them in interesting ways. But there were things that I wanted to do, in that every time someone says, Indian characters, you always think of like, oh yes, the mystical East where people ride on flying carpets and pray to elephant-headed gods. And I kind of wanted to step away from that. I mean, the stereotype exists for a reason, and there are lots of cool stories to be told within that space. But I kind of wanted to step away from that and wanted to do a contemporary, one of the world's fastest developing economies and one of the world's fastest developing technology sectors, and a large sort of growing market of consumers and technology users. Let's take that and let's do something cool there. So I kind of thought of this idea, which is also a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek idea, that said, why are all the superheroes kind of focused around America and Europe, and you only have like 2 guys who are from this country that is, I think, the most populous country in the world now? So it's a little bit weird, right? So I was taking that as a concept, and I went, okay, cool. So now India is going through this process of engineering or jerry-rigging its own meta-human force, and how do you do that? You have to get people willing to do crazy things to get that up and running. So that's where the idea kind of started from. And then I started thinking about, what would it be like to be a vigilante in a country that is not black and white? There are no good guys and bad guys. There's just so many guys that there are so many opinions, and they all are part of some nebulous spectrum. And it's impossible to be right, and it's impossible to be wrong all the time. So what's it like to be a hero in there, and what's it like to be a vigilante in that society? So hopefully people will find it interesting.
So how much can you tell us about kind of like the origin of how these superheroes or vigilantes get together?
I can tell you what we know.
Okay.
I can't tell you the truth, because that's something you have to find out.
Okay.
What we know.
I love reading your stuff because I know that's the way it's going to go.
What we know is that there have been rumors of a group of metahumans that have been of late intervening in governments or vested interest groups using dangerous new technology, be that AI, dimensional transfer, new weapons, plasma rifles, whatever it is. All of a sudden, if you're developing something of that sort, you find 4 or 5 guys come over, take your technology, destroy it, shut down your operation, leave, and they disappear. And all you have is this mark that shows this kind of V sign with an eye symbol next to it, and you know you've been hit by the vision. So that's what the world knows of these guys. Very clandestine, very secretive group. And I don't think I'd be giving too much away considering the issue comes out tomorrow. But certainly in the first opening chunk of the issue, you find out that there's this doctor called Dr. Shankaran who's apologizing to various secretive government people for having taken a lot of money from them and having completely failed at developing these meta-humans, superpowered humans for them. So he gets fired, his department gets shut down, they chuck him out onto the road. But you find out clearly he's been lying, and there are these five people that are now running a vigilante group under his auspices. But of course, none of these motivations are true. None of these people are who they seem to be. And there is a bigger conspiracy, bigger, more dangerous people in the background that we will discover as the story goes on.
This makes more sense to me than the traditional superhero group putting together, right? Where you have somehow government being organized enough to put together enough money and or people that
you can't vaccinate a few million people. Are you going to control the next Superman? What's going on?
It does make more sense to have, whoever is the most wily to be able to steal the most stuff that they can use to do whatever they think needs to get done.
and wily is a good term. Like this is a group of metahumans being led by someone who, for all practical purposes, has no powers, except he is very, 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 very wily, as you would describe it.
That's what we all love about oh no, I've forgotten her name. Oh, she rules all of the Suicide Squad. Amanda Waller.
Oh, Amanda Palmer. Yeah.
She doesn't really have anything going on for her except for that she looks like she would take a switch to you if you did not fall in line, and that's enough.
Oh yeah. And this guy isn't as I would say bold or forthcoming as Amanda Palmer, but you'll end up doing something for him and then discover that he manipulated you for years to get you to just do that one thing for him.
But somehow we're still going to fall in line, right?
Yeah. The lot you were already falling in line. You just didn't know it.
Oh, I cannot wait to read it. It's like it's actually probably in the back room right now. I might actually take it home to read it.
Yeah, it's very much along the lines of that sort of planetary, global frequency, conspiracy behind the conspiracy, dangerous people in quiet back rooms manipulating the world kind of feel to it. Yeah.
Now, is this designed to be the beginning of a long-running series, or is it designed to be a short miniseries launch and then see what happens?
Well, the ambitious part of me is like, bring it on. I can write as many stories as you want me to. The practical part of me is, hey, it's a 6-issue miniseries. So the realist is, if these 6 issues do well, then there will probably be more arcs. Much like Swamp Thing was. It was originally slated to be a 10-issue thing, and it did well enough to be continued into a second season. To be honest, we could have probably continued longer, but it felt right to give people a contained story that had something to say.
Do you often give yourself like personal challenges like that, where you know something is designed to be short, but then you're like, well, I'm gonna create a universe or characters or use characters that exist in a way that they'll want to know more. That there's like, okay, we can finish it here, but
I mean, I pitched Swamp Thing that way. I said, look, all I need is 10 issues, but if it does well, I have 16 issues in my pocket. To be honest, it was 20 issues, but we truncated it to 16. But that's how I pitched Swamp Thing. We pitched a season 1, and frankly, like, it's how all other contemporary mediums work. You pitch a season. Your season does well, you get another season. That season does well, you get another season. And I'm fine working with that sort of reality being the framework. But then you do enough of those things, and there's a book like Detective where I went in and I said, hey, I have to pitch you this 30-issue long opera that I want to write. And they were like, yeah, let's do it. So I tend to think of stories as finite things. I don't quite enjoy. I have very rarely seen part 3 of a trilogy of films that I've enjoyed. Let me put it that way.
I feel you.
Like maybe Lord of the Rings. And I would be hard pressed to find another part 3 of a movie that I thought was very good.
Unless there's lots more parts, and then number.
Oh no, Miss Jen has frozen.
Oh no.
Hold on just a second. Ooh, I don't think she knows. Hold on. So
I'm just imagining. I'm imagining the chat just listing all the great 3-part trilogy films that exist that I haven't seen yet.
Oh, I know. That's my thought process is like, you know what? I'm going to think of 20 million of them right after this is over. Let's take this opportunity to take a quick break. And then when we come back, we'll get into the Marvel side of things with Web of Carnage. How's that?
Great. Sounds great.
All right. See you in a second.
You know how when you go to Comic-Con, after Comic-Con, you go to the hotel bar, and there's a whole bunch of people playing music and dancing, and you've got Pikachu and Lara Croft Tomb Raider doing the cha-cha slide just down from Deadpool and Batman and Wonder Woman? That's every Saturday night over on the Experience Twitch channel. Join Taji Beats for the EXP Dance Party, exclusively on Twitch, twitch.tv/the_EXP. Why was Princess Zelda sad after watching a bunch of YouTube videos? She couldn't find the link in the description. We'll stop if you subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's super easy. Click subscribe and click the bell when you do. And thanks for supporting the EXP.
Everybody, and welcome back. It looks like producer Kyle has given us a list of things that the third movie was just as good. Rocky, Star Wars, and Toy Story. If you guys can think of some more, throw them up in the comments. And also, if you think of questions you'd like to ask Taram, now's the time. It's a really great opportunity to be able to ask him about things that have been burning holes in your head, about stuff that he's been doing. Oh, and James Bond. That's true, James Bond. Went way past its brief.
I don't know. I feel like we could have a few hours of discussion about some of those choices. What is It's a conversation for in person over a few drinks rather than criticizing people's tastes online.
I'll see you at the bar at the Hyatt for San Diego, and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, sounds great. Sounds great.
Okay, so you just went through and did an amazing co-writing storyline on Venom with Al Ewing, and tackled characters that I love very much, and that universe has been kind of like they're now talking way more deeply about the characters of Dylan and Normie, and that character series has gotten to be so awesome. Now you get to tackle in and hit Carnage from the other end, which has been he's been kind of left behind for the Venom character for a little while. Where are you starting in the story?
I mean, to be honest, I was writing the Carnage solo. Yeah, the Carnage ongoing right before this. I was writing that, and the Web of Carnage is kind of the culmination of that. And then going forward, I'm kind of handing off the books to other writers. Like I know, I think Christos Gage is writing part of the Web of Carnage stuff. I know Alex Packnadell is writing a Red Goblin book as well. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, this was kind of my leaving off point, if you will. Okay. And yeah, part of the reason for that is I just felt like I was doing too much work. And so I had to cut back on a few books, but it was an absolute joy to be able to get the stories to that point, to get sort of watch people invest in this new character, new Venom, write that crazy time travel double plot line with Al Ewing, work with Brian Hitch. That was great. And then on the Carnage side of things, just, completely do a new take on Carnage that hadn't been seen and that I think people really enjoyed. I took him to parts of the Marvel universe where he hadn't been before, took him to hell and back. So, that was, this is kind of the culmination of that. And obviously, while I was working with Al, there were big picture plans in terms of what we wanted to do with Carnage and Venom. So this is all still playing to a plan, and you will see the books kind of come together and collide in time. It was a joy to work on it. It was great fun. But yeah, I was doing too much, and this might be the first year that I've kind of dipped my toes outside of comics as well. Been writing some screenplay stuff, some animation stuff, adapting some of my own books to other mediums. So it's been exciting.
So that's such an exciting thing to be able to be in a spot where you can say, okay, I'm interested in doing these things. You didn't have anybody give you any pushback on those things. They're like, it's a natural progression for you to be able to go and do screenplays and those other kinds of things. It was a good match.
Well, I mean, I didn't come into writing sort of learning writing or knowing the rules, if you will. So if you're able to work and create good things without knowing the rules, I think that puts you in an interesting position because when you go to other mediums, you've not really learned one medium by its rules, if you will. And so I've always been of the view that if you focus on writing and storytelling, then the medium is just a different set of tools that you have to learn each time. So like if your understanding of building things, like the mechanics of building things is exceptional, then sometimes you can build a chair, sometimes you can build a bed, sometimes you can build far more complex things. So yeah, I look at writing in mediums that way. And I had to learn how to write for comics and much in the same way I had to learn how to write, you know, my scripts for screenplays, and I literally did a 2-year course to learn how to write prose. So there's so much craft. I know writers like to pretend like they're magicians and they do things, conjure up stories, but there's a lot of craft involved, and there are a lot of things you can learn.
Was there some advantage to going into them without knowing the rules? Do you feel like there was an advantage that it then brought such a unique voice to it that it pushed the medium forward?
I don't know. I wouldn't sort of presume to say I had some great unique voice. We will see when the things come out if I have a great unique voice. But I think not knowing the rules lets your mind treat everything as a guidance, as a norm, as a way things are done, rather than treat it dogmatically, going like, I can't do this or I can't do that. And the moment you start getting creative people saying you can't do certain things, then you kind of become formulaic and you repeat yourself, or you write within yourself. And so my brain's never told me I couldn't do a thing. And I think that has some value to it.
Oh, absolutely. All right. So Kyle I think it's Kyle has asked the question that I have always wanted to know, because I know that you have also a musical background. When are we getting a musical written by you?
So two things that really intimidate me when it comes to writing are writing poetry and writing songs. So I don't know if you noticed this, but End of Layla's Star, there's some poetry in the final issue. And like, hand to God, I wrote that as a joke. I was like, this is such bad, sappy poetry that I'm lampooning myself when I write this. And people were like, oh, this is really lovely. And I'm like, don't say that. That just encourages me to write bad, sappy things. Yeah, I've yet to make that leap into poetry, but you know, I think it's a step up from there to write songs. You know, I have a musical background, but largely have stuck to the guitar because lyrics are a mountain in the distance that I am yet to scale.
Maybe there'll be a good collaboration you can get into, get inspired by somebody and they can inspire you.
Yeah. To be honest, I mean, I don't think it's an intimidation that comes from sort of being ill-equipped. It's an intimidation that comes from loving the thing so much that you're like, I can't possibly do that. Like, I don't know, I can't possibly write like Nick Cave. I can't possibly write like Bob Dylan or Tom Waits. These are my favorite, I don't know, songwriters, lyricists when it comes to music, and I have a ways to go before I get there.
Don't make it too precious that you don't try. You know we want to do those things. John's S says, is Radio Apocalypse coming back? Good question.
As of now, it looks unlikely, just because you'll understand, Jen. Like, it fell prey to the COVID era. I think all the people working on the creative teams had COVID twice in the course of working on that book. And so it was this really weird thing. Like, I had COVID, so my scripts were late. And then when my scripts were ready, Anand had COVID. And then when he was starting to work, Aditya had COVID. And then we did that same thing another time around, and it had taken so long to get anything done that we had to take a decision to say, okay, we can't keep doing this. Just because it's okay for me, I can write scripts. Yeah, I can take a month off. I can write a few scripts. But if Anand's waiting on scripts and lettering for months on end, then that's really hurting him, because he has to draw pages every day. And so, yeah, he had to take on other projects, and when artists take on projects, they're gone for a year and a half. So sometimes books fall by the wayside. But if we do come upon a juncture where all three people are available and they're like, yeah, let's take it back up, then maybe. But sometimes it's the way things go.
Have you gotten to work with, or are you planning on working with in the future, any of your other past collaborators?
Yeah, I mean, my endeavor has always been to continue working with all of them. I have a creator-owned book this year that involves Sumit, who did The Savage Shores with me, but I'm not collaborating with him directly. And you will know more when we announce the book.
Okay.
But that'll be interesting. And then I'm working on a creator-owned book with Evan Cagle, who does all the covers on Detectives. And this is someone I've been collaborating with for years now. I've collaborated with Lalit before, who's doing The Vigil, but when we made comics for India. There will be other collaborators on The Vigil that have worked with me before, but I won't preempt that announcement. And Philippe and I are working. Philippe Andrade, who did Layla Star with me, and I are working on our next collaboration as well. So, yeah, I tend to find people that I vibe with, and then we just keep making books, I suppose. And then Anand and I will be working on something early next year as well. So,
I'm excited to see that. I think of all of the collaborators you work with, I think Anand's my favorite, but that's just me.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, I think he's brilliant. He's just done a cover for one of my creator-owned books, and it is amazing and striking as ever. So, I mean, there will definitely be more stuff from us in the future.
So excited. Excuse my voice. I wanted to say hi to Frog, who's on watching. So it's a great surprise to find this going on YouTube after he gets off work. Welcome in. Does anyone else have any other questions? Pop them in there. I think it's funny that no one else came up with any more movies that are. The third was see, you got everybody. You got everybody.
In a world of franchised movies, one after the other, we came up with a list of maybe 4, with at least half of them being debatable.
Hey, hi, Tadam. How you doing? Okay, here's some good questions. People are going deep now. Who's been your most difficult character to write?
Don't know that I've had a difficult character to write, to be honest. Like, I don't know that I think of characters in terms of like ease of writing or difficulty of writing. So yeah, it's an odd question to answer, but if you talk in terms of pure statistics, then it has been Batman, because it's the first time I've written, or I am in the process of writing such a long run, and to do an ambitious run with a character that has had the decades of history behind him. You have to get a lot of things right. Then you have to I don't know, get to the core of why people find this character iconic in a lot of ways. So, but I don't know that that's a difficulty. I think that's just it's just the challenge of writing these characters.
So this is a question from me. There's another beautiful question on here, but this is the question I've always had. So when you go to write a character that's been around as long and is as complex and as loved as Batman, how can you possibly know everything that has been written about him so that you don't accidentally do something contrary to his very character? Do you just have do you have people that come alongside you and help you with that data just so you know it, or you just do a deep dive and read everything?
Yes and no to all things you just mentioned, because I think the basic premise of you can't do things that are contrary or you shouldn't is mistaken. My analogy for contemporary comics is that we are writing a modern day mythology, right? We're writing the equivalent of, Norse mythology or Indian mythology or Persian mythology. And if you actually read any of these things, not the translations, not the justifications, the original stuff, if you read it, it is absolutely bonkers. Like sometimes, let's not even go that far. Let's take a contemporary mythology. Let's take King Arthur and his sword Excalibur, right? Yep. There are at least 4 different locations where he's supposed to have found the sword.
Mm-hmm.
One of them's a lake, but then in some stories he pulled it out of a stone. In some stories he was given 2 swords, one by the Lady of the Lake and the one that he pulled out of the stone. No one knows which one the Excalibur really is. In some stories he was based in Wales. In some he was, in England. And that's just like recent history. That's not even Norse mythology old. That's just like a few hundred years ago. And so I think you have to write the contradictions. I think it's what makes mythologies great. Because one guy writes something in year 1, and then another guy writes something 10 years down the line. And then a third guy comes along 30 years down the line, and he has to now make both things work because someone tells him both things have to have happened. Figure it out. That's the beauty of writing comics. The beauty is not in linearly justifying everything. So, everything happened. Alfred is the guy who took care of young Bruce Wayne when his parents died. But then you read whatever happened to the Cape Crusade and you're like, oh, wait, Alfred's also Joker. That's weird, but that's cool. And that's what I love about comics. Like, there are no truths. There are no fundamental pillars of storytelling. No, everything is up in the air. And you're constantly juggling expectations as it should be. Otherwise, it'd be boring.
Josh puts on here, page 1, Batman loads his pistol. Oh, crap. But even then, that's intriguing because why is Batman loading a pistol if we know?
Yeah, that's a great start to a really good story. Don't give it away.
That's perfect. And John asked the question, how many issues of Detective do you have left in the tank?
Well, the original run was slated for about 30 issues, and we've gone through 10 of them. So around 20 more, give or take.
Do you tend to thumbnail it out so that you have your story beats that are supposed to hit? Or are you more kind of like, okay, I know I got to get to 30 pages. These are the 3 big beats I got to hit.
I call them tent poles, so I know my tent pole beats. And then once you have your tent poles, it's just a matter of, connecting them without letting the tent sag in between, if you will, to belabor the analogy. But yeah, once you know your sort of beginning and end, that's where you usually start with. You have, or I don't know, sometimes you start in the middle, but beginning and end, kind of generally you get that. Middle's always a challenging portion because, and I heard this lovely comment from another writer said, middle is always a challenging portion of the story because no one ever reads a book to get to the middle. You're always excited about starting a book. You're always excited about finishing a book. No one's ever excited about the middle of a book. And that's why it's challenging. But also, once you've kind of had an understanding of structure, you know where the important parts of a narrative tend to be. And then you kind of focus on developing those beats. And once those are developed, I used to really, really, really painstakingly plot out everything. But then I realized when I write, I kind of ignore everything I painstakingly plotted out anyway. So now I don't do that bit where you plot everything out. And actually, it's much more enjoyable experience because you kind of give yourself room to do one-off things, whimsical things, tell stories within stories. It's also the thing I get criticized for most often. It's like, wait, we were just getting to the point where everything was about to explode, and then you paused for a whole issue to tell me a different story. But I think you're supposed to feel impatient. You're supposed to feel like, oh my God, why did you delay the next bit? It's fine.
Mm-hmm. That's brilliant storytelling. All right, well, we're here at the end. Where should everyone hunt you down for convention-wise? Are you planning on some convention sightings?
I will be at San Diego, and then I think the next U.S. convention might be New York. After that, I might not be doing too many in between this year because I did a fair few last year. I did Florida, and I think that was at one of the others as well. I can't remember. And it took a lot out of me. This year, I'm doing a lot more conventions in Europe. I did Paris. I will be doing another one in Spain. I already did a convention in Valencia as well. And those are much easier on me because I'm like, 2 hours travel. That's great. But yeah, I will probably be at San Diego and New York. San Diego probably have a lot of books announcing, and then New York, I'll probably have a lot of books that have just come out. So good times to be there.
If you're going to Comic-Con, make sure you put all his panels on your schedule because you know that's where all that cool news is going to drop. So I know where to follow you on Twitter at the Right Round.
Yeah.
Where else should people follow you?
I'm on Instagram on Ram V Writes, but that's about it. I focus most of my attention on Twitter, occasionally on Instagram. I have accounts everywhere else that have been lying dormant for years. So if anyone's posting anything there, that's not me.
I know I'm always like, oh, I'll talk to Ram on Facebook. No, that's not where he is.
Yeah, but I mean, you can't talk to me on Facebook. Facebook is like my window into this world that I don't participate in. I just look at people and usually the interesting bits are like when people get really mad and make like 4-page long posts about some mundane thing. And I'm just like, okay, I'm going to read this whole thing now. But I haven't posted anything on Facebook in such a long time. Yeah.
So you basically come to Facebook to be entertained.
Yes. There's nothing more entertaining for a writer than watching people be people.
Jay says that's the best description of Facebook I've ever heard. Thank you so much, Ram. I'm so thankful that you had time to come see us in the middle of the night.
Always a pleasure talking to you.
Now you get to go and do your writing. Be creative.
Yeah, I'll start in about an hour.
Perfect.
Great. Thanks for having me. Thank you, everyone, for watching along.
Yeah, thanks everybody for being here. Make sure that you do subscribe and share so everybody knows that we have this awesome talk every Monday so they don't miss any of this cool stuff and accidentally, tune in 2 minutes after it's over. We'd like them to not miss it. So thank you guys for being here. We'll see you guys next week on Monday for Talkin Shop. Thanks, Ron.
Thank you.
Join the party. Head over to our link tree to find all the links for everywhere the experience is all the time.